Very excited to be next to one of my favorites over here, Princess. Unjani sis?
Ndiyaphila bhuti unjani?
Kulungile sis, shap. Don't look at nje. Jagutanda, by the way. And you know what? Of course, and everybody loves the Springboks as well. As you know, with the build-up of the campaign, they are doing their best in Japan to look after us. And of course, we've been sending the messages through. And as Graham said just a little bit earlier, you know, sometimes people like Twitter actually notice when they're hearing an entire country on their social media sites sending messages to this one team. It had to be interesting enough for us to connect with Twitter, and that's why Graham catches up with Twitter's Barry Collins.
So on Sunday, all eyes, of course, will be fixed on our Springbok rugby team as they take on Wales to continue their bid to return home from the Rugby World Cup in Japan with the almighty Webb Ellis Trophy in hand. Now, with Twitter being the platform everyone goes to engage about anything that's happening, especially our sport, it has provided unique opportunities for South African citizens and, I suppose, businesses alike to reinforce the idea of being #stronger together. We love the brand. Now, joining us via Skype from Dublin, Ireland, to unpack more on the integrated relationship between Twitter, sports, television, and, of course, our beloved Boks, is Twitter's Director of Sales for Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, Barry Collins. A very good morning, Barry.
Good morning, Graham.
Barry, first of all, commiserations. Maybe you're going to be supporting the Springboks now. We really appreciate you connecting with us. We are obviously a fiercely proud nation, and we love the fact that our Springboks are doing so well. I think Japan did us a favor against you guys. That really did help us out. But maybe a good place to start is you would have a very good idea, a broad overview of who is using Twitter, probably the most widely used when it comes to sport. How would you describe the Twitter audience?
Yeah, Twitter's got a huge audience in South Africa, and interestingly, almost half of all of our users in South Africa use Twitter to keep up with sports-related activities. So obviously, with rugby being such a huge sport in South Africa, we're seeing enormous usage of the platform now during the Rugby World Cup.
So what have the South Africans, building on that, what have the South Africans been doing on Twitter when it comes to this particular World Cup? What trends have you been picking up?
Yeah, I think that the Springboks, the official Springbok Twitter handle has been really active and engaging. Obviously, using the hashtag Stronger Together has been a very unifying call to all the supporters. But also, like, the content that they've been tweeting out has been really interesting. You know, behind the scenes, seen some training, clips, interviews that you don't see anywhere else. So I think just bring that unique view behind the scenes for the Springboks, so all of the the rugby obsessed supporters there is just like really uniquely Twitter.
I've got to ask you, because you get this beautiful bird's eye view of the world, who is the most active when it comes to rugby nations? Where does South Africa sit in that landscape?
Yeah, I mean, South Africa is the 5th most followed handle in the world. So after South Africa, England, France, arguably kind of larger countries in terms of populations. So really strong. There's 650,000 followers in the handle. That's really strong for any sporting brand. So I think it's a strong game they're playing.
Have you been able to see, obviously, at Springboks is the official handle, the one that's been embraced. Are our teams engaging? Are you seeing Springbok players? Is there interplay between the fans? Because obviously we love to think that every time we tweet these guys, they're reading our message and that we've got this connection to the team through that. Does that exist? Are they engaging with us in that same way? I know a lot of the wags that are out there in Japan are using social media in a big way. Do the players connect with us in that way? What's their activity like?
Yeah, I think anytime you kind of listen or talk to players, I think they often say that as it gets closer to the match, they tend not to engage too much. But as they have a couple of down days, I think it's only natural for them to see what's being said and just a general sentiment around the tournament. So yeah, people definitely do engage. They're not replying to everybody. The volumes are just incredibly large. I mean, some of the spikes in tweet volumes over the last couple of weeks have had global impact. And whilst rugby is a very big game for many of us, it's globally it's not as big as football. But still, some of the major trends in the last few weeks have been anytime Japan has been involved. And Japan-South Africa game last weekend was the biggest tweeted event in the world on the day, and the biggest tweeted event of the Rugby World Cup so far. Not surprisingly, right? Japan is an enormous amount of users of Twitter, and South Africa also. So when the two of them collide in like what was an amazing game, you get this incredible impact.
And also, I suppose, a bit of a fairy tale story and narrative going with Japan. I've got to ask you, I know you're completely biased, but now that you can be a bit more objective, who's going to win this thing?
I do expect it to be a South Africa All Blacks final, and I think it's going to be hard to see the All Blacks being beat on their current form, unless you kind of drag them into a similar game that the Springboks play. I think if you try, anybody who's tried to take on the All Blacks with the open flowing rugby has kind of run into trouble. We can tell you firsthand about that. So it's going to be hard to beat the All Blacks, but I think Springboks have had an amazing comeback in the last year, 18 months since Rassie Erasmus came back from Ireland.
Oh. No, completely, man. Well, thank you for your Irish influence on that side as well. Been an absolute pleasure connecting with you. I know we're going to connect with you again around this very exciting time, but enjoy soaking up all the amazing rugby and, of course, all the amazing activity that comes with that on Twitter. You guys are doing a fantastic job. Thanks for taking cognizance of where South Africa, our tiny little corner of Africa, fits into the grand scheme of things. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Greg.
Oh, man, so cool to see that South African connection across the globe. We're going to unpack more on this fascinating discussion with Barry Collins from Twitter, so be sure to keep it locked to your Feel Good Breakfast Show.